everybody. Hey, Jake. I gotta get back to you. Alright. It's been a busy beginning of the year, but it's still nice to get these Mondays going. But we will get started in a couple minutes. Hey, Alex. Casper, how you doing? Alright, so it's 11. We can get started. Alright, so we're going to pick up where... Hey, Sleeping Dumplings. Hey, Kristen. So, 2 weeks ago, we did 3 of these designs. And then, just because we already did the designs and thought maybe be fun to do a 4th one. So yesterday I created this like traveler moth creature thing, and I think it was Casper said that wanted to go through the full process of coloring and everything, so I didn't flat it or anything like that. So I'm just going to pick the colors, go through the whole thing, and then we will see how far we can get. I hope we can get these all rendered up tonight, but you never know. So you guys can hear me okay, I assume. I want to make sure there's no sound issues. Okay, so I'm going to paint them all kind of like at the same rate, go through all of them. So I'll do like the flats and everything, and then rendering all that stuff. So I think I'm just going to go through each one and kind of do the same thing all the way through. So there'll be times where like things will be just completely unfinished while we work on another thing. But just because I want to just relax and do it the way I would normally do it, I'm going to get the basic flats done in Clip Studio, which is what I like to do. But I still like to do my final painting in Photoshop. So as soon as we get everything sort of flatted in, I am going to move over to Photoshop for no other reason where then I just enjoy it more. So there you go. All right, so I'm going to start picking colors and flatting, and really, even though what just like I know you guys have seen me do this before, but like really all I'm going to be doing is trying to kind of get my masks down. I'm going to try and label them accordingly so I can find them again, but they will in no means be final colors unless like miraculously I just pick exactly the right color at the right time. So don't get mad at me if I pick some terrible color combination. Alright, let's start with this guy. So I'm going to do his fur first. And then, while I'm doing this, please, I know this is like more of like a technical thing. It's not as subjective. So if you guys have questions, just hit me up. And I don't know what color to make him yet, but I'll start with a blue. And the reason I still like to flat, even though it's totally fine to flat in Photoshop, is the brushes that I draw with. the fill tools and stuff, they feel a lot like the stuff that I'm doing the line work in, and so I don't know why, it feels more cohesive. Like when I'm doing these flats, like I can kind of get the same mark making and fill them faster. That may be just like a totally psychosomatic thing, but it is what it is. But I just like working in Photoshop for doing sort of like this layered technique. If I was doing straight up painting, I wouldn't care what program I was in. But if I'm doing this like layered technique, I like my texture brushes in Photoshop. I just like the way that they work a little bit. But most of all, I like the organization of Photoshop. And you can definitely do everything that Photoshop can do as far as that organization goes, but there's just like these little nuancy things that are just more comfortable for me. But I am sort of actively working towards removing that part of the equation, but I'm not sure. Not sure it's worth it. So another thing is like when I'm flatting, sometimes the very first color I pick, it just has to have enough color contrast so it's really clear if I'm filling my edges well. If I have a color that's like really close to another color, sometimes it's hard to tell if you've actually filled it accurately. So like having this like nice stark blue up against the gray kind of like clears things up. And then it's just easier for me to make sure that my flatting is more accurate. But that said, like if you don't notice it, that you've filled something not so great, then maybe it's not a big deal, but sometimes you do like a major color change like this, and all of a sudden those edges start to show up. Let's see, what do I want to do for this guy? I know I always lean into purple, but I think I kind of like that like deep kind of grayish blue, a little less saturation. That's luminosity. Yeah. Hey Steven, hey Concept Cole. Straight up painting would be like, I'm not using like layer effects, like layer modes to do shading or anything like that. I'm literally just painting. Does that make sense? Like if I was like literally just picking the color from my shadow, like also not, if I'm doing my shadows and I'm literally picking the color and I'm not using like a multiply layer to do the shading. Okay, so that's fur. Let's do the leather. So like I can already tell that this leather's got too much, it's too light and too orange, so I'll be adjusting that. And it might be the right color for a different color character, but I don't like it with this blue personally, so I'm gonna change that. So I would probably darken it, and also I just feel like that sits a little bit better. Yeah, maybe just a bit more red involved in there. So that's just like a real personal choice, but like that's why I really like having these on separate layers too. Okay, then let's do his, oh, I forgot part of his strap. do his wraps. And these are probably similar color, but more kind of beiged out. I'll probably muck these up a little bit. So you can see like right here, this is a tricky one because if I'm using this color, this beige, it's hard to tell the edges. Looks like I got my silhouette a little screwed up. Hold on a second here. Here we go. So this beige that I'm using for the wraps is really tough to tell up against that gray if I'm actually being accurate with it. So a couple things is I could use like a really saturated color and just really see that color and then adjust it later to this beige, or I can just overpaint and just be really sloppy and then just do the skin on top. So I'll call that the wraps, and then instead of worrying about it too much, I'll use a different, like bright purple or something. Let's say like that's the skin color. And then that one's going to show up really easily, so then I can say, I can clean up that edge, even though I've overpainted everywhere else. And I'm just going to include the nails in the skin layer because I can add the nails later. Toes. And then I think his eyelids are going to be the same color. Oh, I can't do that now. Alright, do that later. I have that layer below the fur, so it's not as easy to put the same layer above everything. So now let's find out what color that's going to be. So I like the purple, but I'm going to definitely desaturate it and darken it just ever so slightly. And just play that a bit. So I'm getting, you know, like I'm accustomed to like getting like the color that I think it's going to be, but I like 9 times out of 10, like it's like a slight hue shift or something like that to kind of get it dialed just right. All right, let's do the papers. And that's probably going to be a similar color to the gauze, but I don't want to keep it, even though it's the same color, because it's paper. It's the paper and it's a different object altogether. I just want to keep it on its own layer. All right, and pants, skulls, and then we'll do the eyes. Pants. These are in no particular order. I'm going to use a bright green just so I make sure I'm getting it just really accurately. But it's not going to be this color. So you can see how like a really saturated color makes it really easy to see. Make sure that your masking is nice and clean, and then you can dial it to whatever you want. Cool. Starting to feel like kind of like a traveler from some like fantasy game or something like that. And then the skulls, just kind of do like a warm white. I'm going to use the same color for the teeth for now, but the keeping it on a separate layer again, just so it's easy for me to load that selection for shading purposes. I'll do the eyes. You can see how quickly the layers start to add up. I'm sure you guys have all had your million layer files. But if you label them all, it never seems quite as chaotic. Or at least label the important ones. Like if you have layers linked down onto other parent layers and that parent layer is at least named, sometimes that's all you need. Or all I need. Alright, so I think we're going to go with the more yellow eye. And then the last thing I do for most characters is kind of like all the little doodads. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to put that bracelet on its own layer. I guess I will. So, those eyes, teeth, skulls. This will be the bracelet. I've gotten really good at typing with my left hand because I keep my keyboard over on underneath my left. It's a holdover from modeling. Alright, so now I can do the incidentals. Oh, those are the eyes. What did I do? Oh, I just didn't even name it. And then there's always like a miscellaneous layer. And that's like all the little things that don't really require their own individual layers, but still gotta get flatted in. So like we can do, it's probably not that big a deal, but we'll do the nails and stuff. I'm gonna sneeze in a second here. I can feel it. Sorry. I'm allergic to working, I guess. So for the nails, I just want to go with like a deeper. I'm going to do some patterning on his fur. I'm not going to do that until I get into Photoshop. Do this patch a different color. And does that take care of him? That's it for him. Alright, so we can move on to the robot. So I should have done this before, but I'm going to I have this one mask for all the flats that I'm linking down onto, but I think it's going to make more sense to do them individually. That way I can close them into folders. So I can group all this together and name that, like, I'm going to call this like moth. And then I can collapse that way. That way my stack doesn't get out of hand visually. It's already out of hand. And then I can just keep. So I'll do this guy next. And I'll. Great. Do that backwards. Okay. Then we'll put him in a group and we'll call that robot. Alright, so even though the way I like to do robots, yeah, I could probably, if this turns out the way I want it to, then I'll put it up on Gumroad. So for robots, what I tend to do, and I could leave the gray as the base, which why don't I do that? I usually start with like a sort of dark medium gray, and then the first layer I do is like the paint layer. So like I don't know what color I'm gonna make this guy, but for now, one way to do it is I'm just gonna for some intricate stuff I'm gonna put a mask on it, and I'm just gonna start trying things out, because with robots it's kind of a back and forth to like what's painted and what isn't painted. You know, like, so it's nice to have the option to add and remove stuff as needed. And all I'm doing right now is I'm trying to decide what is strictly painted, not necessarily the same color, just painted, because that way I can create like a subfolder with the mask that I'm painting right now. And if I want to do some chipping away and things like that, but I've done like all this intricate paint work where like stripes and different colors on different parts of the body, I could do the chipping over top of everything. So all I care about really right now is the difference between exposed metal and paint. So that's all going to be painted. That's all going to be painted. And we'll leave that screw exposed. So it's just like going through and making those decisions. And the mask is nice because it's so non-destructive that you're not committed to anything. You just turn it on and off and see what it looks like, and you can add, subtract all you like. So yeah, I'm gonna do the hand, palms anyway. And robots are one of those drawings that I find that I often will start flatting something and I have to go back in on the line work and add details that I couldn't have imagined were even going to be needed until I got to flatting and realized where some of the surface breaks were. He's wearing orange pants right now. And then as a general habit, I do try and do, and I don't follow these rules as well as like just saying like they're just good practice, but I don't always follow them myself. But what I was going to say is I do try and do left and right arms if they're symmetrical, left and right legs, especially on robots or anything that has like a unique patterning to it, because it's fresh in my brain like what is and isn't painted, and whatever has to exist on both sides. It's like if I come back to it later, I tend to not be as in tune with the specifics of that object. And also the nice thing about robots, if you know ahead of time that you're going to be chipping the crud out of it, you can be kind of sloppy on this mask, because you're going to go back and you're going to be removing so much that a lot of it's the specificity of getting right to the edge of the line work and things like that are kind of like wasted time, because you're just going to be messing it up anyway. I'm going to try and be as neat as I can just because it's good form, but it's not. Let's see, I think most of that's going to be painted. See, this is another funny thing. I keep finding little areas that I was supposed to leave masked out. somewhere. I thought it was funny when I finished this guy that it kind of looks like he's wearing a robot diaper, but we'll make it like a cool robot diaper that only the cool robots wear. I think I'm gonna make this guy look military. So I think I'm gonna use like drab greens and things like that on him. I don't do a lot of military stuff, but he looks pretty innocent, so he doesn't really trigger any negativity for me. I think that'll be alright. Hey Justin, sorry, I wasn't looking up. You got COVID. Oh my goodness, did you post it up? Did you post your caricature up? Well, good, I'm glad you're better, man. That's fantastic. Just because I need to remind everybody, if there is stuff that you guys want to bring up that's going on outside this stream, or if there's obviously not like politics and that garbage, but like art related and stuff like that, or anything you guys got going on in your instas or anything like that, throw it in the chat so other people can take a look. As usual, it's always cool to see people catching up. Alright, so just a little bit more exposed metal. And this mask is kind of nice too, because if I decide I want to add or subtract some metal parts, like I want something to be painted later, I can just add it back into the mask. So that's a good technique to have as well. I've heard a lot of people losing the taste and smell stuff. That's so bizarre. I had that happen to me in a cold a long time ago. I got a flu that wasn't nearly as bad as COVID, but it still did it, and it was great for my health. I like stopped eating garbage, but it was so weird to not be able to taste and smell things. But it didn't last too long. Is that right? Okay, so let's get this thing at least closer to the colors I'm going to use. So I'm going to adjust for the primary color, and then I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with the mask. So I'll go something like that. Is that going to work? I don't want to go too dark. Definitely want it to be, there we go. Now we're in business. Alright, so then, and then we need like a secondary green. So in order to kind of take advantage of all that painting that I just did, I'm going to create a group inside of a group, and I'm going to drag the mask that I just painted up onto that folder, and I'm going to name that folder paint. And then so that mask is just going to be like a subgroup in that robot of just the paint stuff. And now I can add things. Like I'm going to add this secondary color. I'm going to take like a slightly lighter, more saturated green. Yeah, something like that. And I'll do the same thing. I'm going to do a mask. So I already found something. I think that's gonna be no. Yeah, so just that little bit's gonna be gray, I guess. Right. But now I can be kind of sloppy. I can just try things out, and I don't have to worry about going into like the exposed metal areas, which is cool. Oh, cool. I'm glad you're streaming, man. That sounds fun. It's definitely holds you to the fire a little bit. So this is probably more saturated than I'm going to leave it, but it's easier to tell what I'm doing. Knuckles. And then I think his shoes are going to be the bright color. And I use shoes in the loosest sense of the word. Feet. And then he needs it. So I'm going to dumb that down just ever so slightly because I'm going to use like a caution yellow on him. And I needed to have a little bit of space. So now something like a construction paint. So now I can do some like smaller details, insignias and things like that. Ring, this face ring. Might be cool to make this ring a little bit creamy color, so the yellow a little bit creamy colored, so it has a little bit of a skull look to it. I don't know, may not need to. Yeah, it looks good yellow, but I'm just gonna try it a little bit later. No, I don't like that. I like it yellow. Okay. So what else can be yellow? So like this insignia. Do like these things. needs a couple little ticky scribe lines. Changes some of this stuff up. Definitely going to be changing the bottle color to like either a blue or a red or something like that, I think. But I'm just looking for little opportunities where I can add a little bit more. You know, like if I want to put like a stripe on his leg, it'll look pretty cool. Give him some asymmetry. What else? What else? Needs one more thing at least, right? How about... So, okay, I'm just gonna add, nope, add stripes on their wrists for no reason other than it looks cool. Okay, so that'll all, like, it looks fine, but it'll all come together when I start chipping up that paint. That'll look even cooler. All right, so now we can go underneath that, link to just the base gray, and we can start dialing in the oh wait, I forgot to do the bottle. Do the bottle. I'm going to start with blue, but I think it's going to be red. Actually, now that I think about it too, we should probably leave that strap that's holding it onto his back exposed metal. So we'll remove that from said mask. Yeah. Okay, so now color. So it could be either like kind of a royally blue or red. Let's see what red looks like. Yeah. There we go. We're starting to work. And then we'll chip that up as well. Oh yeah, character design's all about playing to people's psychosis, your own included. All right, so I'm going to start with the bright metals. I don't really have a reason for that. Actually, I'm going to start with the dark metals and the rubbers and things like that. So like I know like this hose is going to be dark gray because that's made of rubber. I know that these cables look better dark gray. One of them or all of them could be like different colors, like computer wires or something like that, but I think because I'm going with the whole military thing, it's gonna look better if they're like deep rubberized gray. And then what else we got? We got these little vents. I always make those gray. And I have these hoses in here, but I think I actually want those to be reminiscent of like NASA hoses, so I'm gonna make those light gray. Fingers I want to make dark gray, but I'll leave the joints exposed metal. There we go. Robots tend to have a lot more of this kind of like thought process where you're going through and you're just trying to figure things out. Okay, so now we'll do the light grays. Actually, just because we're going with a little military theme, let's do those hoses. So that's going to be dark. See, I didn't label any of these, but I can see from the colors what they are. But these are a little bit more confusing, so this is going to be lights. Okay, so that's not lights, that's the hoses. So I'm just going to leave it a little bit of a warm light gray. Yeah, and then I think that'll look cool to have some kind of like color contrast in there, so it's not just one note all the time. Same thing with these hoses down here. Can't see that one that much. And then going back to the darks, this little rubberized boot that goes over his leg joint, and then we'll go into the light metals. So now we'll do the lights. So we'll do lights. And I mean by light metals, not lights, because he also has lights as well. So we can imagine this is like the screw heads of things, which is something I like to do in my pieces. So go through and just find like all the little screw heads, make those light. Anything else? The opportunities. Oh, you know what? I like pistons. Anytime there's like a piston, it's cool to have it be light. So then this little arm bracket that he's got going on in here. Alright, we're in pretty good shape now. I can just add the lights to him. And I think that's going to be good enough for our Photoshop file. And for whatever reason, things like that are going to be glowing, I like to put on the top layer. So I will say that when I'm drawing now, like I didn't mean to merge this shading that's in his eyeball down, but I'm just going to work around it. That was a mistake. So I just look for opportunities for lights here and there, and I think that's going to work. And now we just find the final color. Okay. The crustacean character's eyes keep making me giggle. Yeah. Whenever you make them look like they're going all in different directions, it's pretty fun. Hey, Bryson. Thanks, man. I appreciate you coming out. Alright, so we got our military bot, our traveler. Those are basic flats. So we can now move on to what I'm saving. Alright, so now let's do crustacean boy here. Crabbo. So he is just a couple of things, which is nice. He's for this painting technique, I really only have to worry about his base shell. So let's go ahead and just figure that out. That's the obvious one. Do we want to go obvious? Let's go with like a, no, because I'm going to save purple for the demon guy. So let's see. I think red is actually going to work pretty good for this sheet. That way it just has like some nice variation in it. But we'll play with that a little bit in Photoshop. We'll get some, because we're going to have like the belly is going to be lighter. We can lean it into orange a little bit. Okay, that's just a good enough thing for me for now. Alright, let's get the eyes. and then it's just really, for him, it's really just the eyes, and he's got the eyes, the ropes, and then the little flexible bits. And then most of the other stuff is just going to be handled through color modulations in Photoshop. So that'll make sense when I get to it. So okay, so there's his eyes. That was pretty straightforward, thank goodness. And then we'll do the flexible bit, and I'll do that behind that. That way I don't have to worry about it. So I'm just going to do like a deep, kind of grayed out purple. And I'm going to do that the same way I did some of the robot stuff. So like all these little flexible bits. And his eye stalks. And in here is quite a bit of flexible bit. Cool. What else? Where else? Ankles. This little joint. That little joint. Who drew this thing? Alright, is that everybody? Okay, and then the last thing is just like the incidentals, like the ropes and stuff. Actually, I might make his backpack a different layer. That way we can have some fun with it easily. But let's do the ropes first. So the ropes, because I want them to be kind of like a deep brown, I'm gonna do them like a crazy kind of like teal, just so I can really see my paint, because ropes tend to be my nemesis when it comes to like bad masks. So I want to make sure like you can see like how easy it is to get outside the line. So the blue makes it really easy to see my mistakes when I'm flatting. And then I'll just do the Q shift to get it dialed to what it needs to be to actually work with the piece. And normally if I was doing concepts for like a client or something like that, I wouldn't try and make all the characters, excuse me, I'm gonna sneeze again. Alright, sorry. I wouldn't make all the characters try and work on the page together. That's not a thing. Like it looks nice on the page, and I want this page to look nice, but clients don't need to see all the characters if they're all basically the same character working together, unless that's part of the brief, right? It's like that all the characters need to work together. All right, so let's figure that out. Do like a warm orangey red, saturate, and drop it down dark. Look at that, the mask is still garbage even though I tried. Alright, maybe I should have just chose this color from the beginning. Must have been like the color vibration. It just made it look like those pixels were filled. Alright, good shit. So now, yeah, the two things I just thought of is like it'd be cool to have the belly, which I know is going to be brighter colored, separated, and it'd be cool to have the backpack. So let's do that. Let's do the belly first. and that's just going to be a bright color, so something like that for now. And I'm partially doing this because I know that it will benefit me when I need to load a mask, when I'm painting those little mandible thingies. I can just click on this and that'll help me a lot when I'm shading. So even though like I know I could probably quickly paint this in Photoshop, it's doing double duty for me later to make my life easier if it already exists as a mask. Just about trying to find ways to keep yourself from going crazy. Cool. And then for his backpack, I'll just use the same color for now, but it's definitely not going to be this color. Should probably be like a nice dark color. Alright, so let's say I'm going to make it the same color as the shell, and then I'm just going to walk it slightly darker, and then just do a slight color shift on it, so it's still in the same family, but it's definitely not his body. You know what I mean? Like, it helps it kind of separate. And I'll do the same thing. I really shouldn't be doing this right now, but I am. Okay. Alright, so that is close enough for what he's going to look like. And then the last one is going to be the demon. And I already have a general idea of how I want him to look. I know he's going to be purple with whites, kind of like glow in the dark white color. Alright, so his group, demon. And then I know I want to use a purple, pretty similar to the joint color I did on the crabs. I'll just steal that for now. Yeah, it's a little too red. Needs to be more demonic and blue. Here we go. Okay, and then for his head, or what am I gonna call these? I don't know, whatever. I'll call it head for now. And then that's gonna be, I want it to look like a glow in the dark green kind of thing. Yep, like that. And then I could just start adding that in as needed. And we'll definitely get some modulation going in this so it's not all one note. Not 100% sure I'm actually gonna make it glow. I just like that kind of like pale green that the ink of like glow in the dark stuff is. It's his claws, which are going to be like a deep purple. He's a demon. He needs dark claws. Nice monsters have light claws. That's not a rule. That doesn't make any sense. Alright. So I think, even though I'm fighting these, I think that's going to be a gradient up. And then, yeah, I have some ideas in mind of what this guy's going to end up like, but let's pick his eye color out at least. So we'll get his eye going, and I think that's going to be enough to get us over to Photoshop. So I'm picking a random color because I think it's going to be a red, but I don't know. Again, I shouldn't have painted in these shading things, but I think by the time I was drawing this one, I realized we were pretty much out of time, and to kind of get some of the volumes in, made sense to just make it look good for the time being. But it would be definitely easier to work with this thing if it was not colored in. Or shaded in, whatever you want to call it. The grayscale rendering should be handled in the paint. But whatever, man. Alright, so let's figure out what color it's going to be. It's going to be that color. That's cool. Nice and creepy. Okay, cool. All right, we're ready to go to the Photoshop. So the next step is going to be going through and like really refining the surfaces, like getting all the little interesting marks in there, and then we'll render them. Shading pass will take a little bit of time, but that's okay. You guys are patient. Okay. So let's go back to Mr. Mothman over here. So inside that group, I'm gonna call that flats. And so now I'm just gonna start trying things out. So as we've painted these things, I've sort of fallen out of favor with this blue. I don't like it as much. I think it needs to be lighter. Yep, that's better. And then that means the eyes are going to change color a little bit. Thank goodness I have my layers named. Here we go. That's our friend. That's the way the friend's supposed to look. Just had to change his shirt a little. Alright, so I'm going to go to the fur and let's see, how am I going to do this? I'll do it on a layer above it, but I'm going to create a mask off of the fur so that I can just paint kind of freely. And so I'm just going to use the smudge tool on top of some general mark making to kind of get the vibe that I'm looking for. So Go with a slight pattern on him. I think like some stripes or something. Be kind of cool. A little darker than that. And then around his eyes, I really like to darken around the eyes with whatever the pattern is. And then I can just use the smudge tool at first. I'm still gonna have to go back and hand paint, but kind of get some of the heavy lifting done. The smudge tool can really get out of hand. I've been notoriously too heavy-handed with it, and it really does look like you use the smudge tool if you go too much with it. So you gotta know when to quit. It's not a cure-all with fur, but it gets you started, and then you go back, and it's a lot easier to just kind of like make the corrections. Drop the opacity down, and just sort of add some little signature hair in. And then we'll kind of do a little bit of a lightning on his muzzle, which will look nice. Same color. Kind of sort of like Looney Tunes and stuff like that. Get that going on. And then just a little bit of like down on his chin here. And then we'll go back with the smudge tool and just kind of make that look like a fur change. And some hand painting. So, and then I'm gonna give him his purple eyelidy things to kind of look like they're like exposed parts of his skin. I think that's gonna look nice. It kind of really helps sell the separation of his fur and eyes and that whole transition. Cool, he's starting to come alive. Alright, then we'll do, I wanted to do some of this white up, not white, but I'm gonna put some of that pattern of white up on his antennae. Okay, so now we can go, I'm gonna do the eyes next. So pick that green, and we're gonna darken it. And there's a couple ways you can do it. You can treat it like human veins, where you darken back here. I gotta lock the transparency. Okay, I could darken it back here and have the veins come out of that towards the eyes, which looks pretty cool. Or you could do it like a crocodile eye, where I think this is the way I'm gonna go. it's nice and creepy. It's like that nice balance of creepy and funny at the same time. Makes my heart sing. Yeah, that's gonna look great. Alright, and then what else we got? We'll skip miscellaneous for now, skip bracelet for now, we'll do the teeth. Do the teeth the way I always do them, where I'm gonna just sort of add some placking into the base. And then I just use the smudge tool and just kind of like just bring the striations down, because a lot of times, like if you look at like a squirrel or something like that, it's like as those teeth start to grow, it's like stretching. I don't know, it has this really nice quality to it. Alright, and then we can use that same, let's go to the skulls, we'll use that same color on the skulls. Now we'll tie those together. Now we can leave the skulls a little darker and the teeth can be just a little brighter. Don't need to be perfect with some of this stuff, because sometimes the little accidents make it look a little bit nicer. And then yeah, I'm going to use a little bit of a noise brush. Just kind of get those skulls looking a little gritty. Next up is I'm going to do the leather. Where's the leather? Did I not name the leather? Nope, that's his arms. I didn't name that. Leather. So this one's fun because you can just chip away some of the little tan exposed areas of chipped leather. Go a long way to making some of this stuff look really fun. It's just finding the high edges, finding like where they'd crack, expose that kind of like inner color of the leather. It's very similar to like metal chipping. Same thing with the bag. So I'm going to do my hand painting, and then I think I'll supplement it with a little bit of a stamp brush just to kind of get a little bit more body out of the chipping. So you can find something that looks like cracks or something like that. It should work pretty good. And of course go back and tweak it by hand. And then because now we got like the base down, we can put some kind of grunge on it as well, where we can use that kind of noisy brush and just darken it a little bit. Set the brush to multiply and go with a much lighter color. Yeah. Just get some of that aged modulation going on in this thing. Alright. Set that back to normal. And let's do the pants, because we're doing this area. So the pants, I just think I want to keep them pretty similar in color, but I just want to muddy them up a little bit. So maybe I will just switch that back to multiply and just do just a bit. Let's see, not liking the dirt color. It's getting away from me. Hold on a second here. There we go. It's starting to work. It looks like I missed on the leather down here. Just gonna paint those together. Okay, what else do we gotta do? We gotta do the wraps. The wraps, same deal. Or I just want to kind of add some, like he's been picking up a lot of stuff. These things have been on him for a long time, so I'm just starting with some sort of stamp, especially on his feet where he's been walking through the dirt a lot. And then I'll go back with a hand paint and just put some interesting character marks in it. Let's see, we got the paper. Paper doesn't need much. We just want to make it look like it's teed a little bit. Where's the paper? Paper. So let's give that its own identity where it's got like a bit more orange in it. As it gets to the ends, like they're starting to age a little bit. Alright. What else on this guy? Oh, his skin. I think that's probably all we're going to need to do on him. So where's his arms? Arms. So I definitely want to give him a little bit of like dirt where it's touching the ground more, and I'm just using the same purple that his claws are because I feel like that's gonna kind of like tie them together nice. It's like a nice soft transition. And then on the bellies, kind of like on a lizard, on the bellies of his arms and his palms, I'm just gonna ever so slightly lighten it up. You've seen this on animals and people who have more pigment in their skin. Sometimes the inner parts of their arms and hands and stuff like that have this like nice brighter color to it. And then the last thing I want to do is give him some spots. Just something I like. this guy is ready to roll. Alright, cool. Next up, am I gonna continue to use this moth character in another project? I don't know. Maybe. I don't usually revisit characters, but maybe. Alright, so that's the flats on the robot. And then this is our paint layer. So, the easiest way to start chipping this guy up, I'm going to do the chipping before I do oil drips and the mechanical stuff being all chipped up. Excuse me. Is just to throw a layer on top of all the paint inside that mask and just pick what color you think is underneath that paint. So what I think it's going to be is dark, but I want rust in there. So I'm just using my noise brush and I'm just stamping, and I don't care. Like what you can imagine, he looks really cool dark gray, but anyway, looks like K2E2. So I just want him to look like as if like a piece of cast iron was left out in the rain at this stage. So you can just pick different oranges. That's not the right brush. It's too smooth. I have so many fonts that whenever I accidentally hit the text tool, it takes like a bunch of time to load. So I'm starting with big modulations. It really doesn't matter what this looks like because you're really only going to be seeing small bits of it, but it's kind of fun to play in this space for a little bit. So having every once in a while having little brighter areas of where some of the rust is brighter can look really nice, and then some areas that are kind of dark. Alright, that should do us just fine. Okay, so now I'm going to mask that off. Sorry, I always have to do this like mental shift because clip handles how you do masking slightly different. Alright, so now we're going to start with our hand painting and start revealing some of that under metal. And I have no pressure sensitivity. What the heck is going on? I lost all my pressure sensitivity. Hold on a second. Cool. Why? There we go. Back. I just had to. Alright, cool. Alright. What was I saying? I'm going to start chipping away. Both figuratively and literally. So I'm just going through the high edges and I'm just creating chipped metal. And it's going to look pretty graphic at first because all the stuff that I'm doing is by hand, but I said it before. I will continue to say it. The hand painted chipped metal stuff on stylized characters always adds a lot, and then you can always supplement it with texture brushes and stuff. So we're just looking for areas where paint has been chipped away from being on the high edge of things, and you can see like it's not abundantly clear, but it has like a nice subtlety to it. Like the paint that I'm chipping away has like a modulation to it, which is what we did when we were adding the blacks and rust colors. So it's not all just gray underneath. So as it got exposed, those metals started rusting. Just go through. This is one of those things you can be as careful or as sloppy as you want. It's up to you. It can still look pretty cool. Yeah, there's a bit of a there's like a bit of a language that sort of develops just from talking about characters all the time, and you start to have terminology. It just seems normal to you until you go out in public and talk with real people. Normal folk will just stare at you blankly. Alright, so what I kind of do as far as like chipping passes go, and this is not a strict rule, it's definitely a back and forth, as I go through and I'm doing all the high edges first. So when I get all the way through this pass, it'll look cool, but it won't. It'll kind of look like all one note, like kind of like a little bit boring. So let's just get through that stage first. Figure out where our chips are. And again, like even after I do the next stage or next pass, I'll probably still go back and hand chip some stuff. And then I always like to think, like, as things get closer to the ground, they're going to get chipped up more. Knee pads in particular on robots. And hello. It's going up, okay. Hold on, I'm having a little bit of a computer slow down. Come back to me. I'm gonna go ahead and save. Go. Okay. So as it gets closer to the ground, more chipping, like on the knee pads and things that you can imagine taking a beating. The feet, in particular, are going to take a big beating. Cool. Okay, so now got up here. It's gonna have rusty ears. So now I keep saying that. Hang on. Now I'm gonna go through and start with some scratch brushes and sort of supplement some of this stuff. Okay, so I'm gonna use, so this one's sort of just like a random noise type of thing, and as I kind of start stamping into it, it starts to thin the paint, start to expose a little bit more of the rust underneath. That looks pretty cool, but then I want some more like deliberate looking scratches. So I have a few go-tos, but I'm gonna try and mix it up a little bit. So like I have these big stamps, and if you do that, like it just goes over, it's over the top, but you can see how they would work. That's too low res. I really gotta go through and curate this thing. It's been too long. So this is sort of like an old favorite. You can see like the story that's starting to kind of build up a little bit, and then I think I'm just going to use like a little bit of a random noise brush as well. Starting to work. Okay, and then so the things that we can do now is like I can go through the paint itself. So like I'm gonna chip away the yellow paint a little bit. Try to think how I'm gonna do this so it's not destructive. Forget it. I'm not gonna worry about it being destructive. I'm gonna just go for it. So like, you know, like just going through and making it so that the yellow paint that's on here is starting to flake away a little bit. That looks pretty cool. Kind of like the insignia's got some age on it. These little stripes, they're not perfect anymore. Goes a long way. Take some of these scratches out that I stamped in. And then even on the light green, you know, getting that messed up too is pretty cool. That's not perfect anymore. I'm going to shift this overall green just a little bit darker and a bit more desaturated. Okay, so then... Okay, so he's looking pretty good. So one thing that's nice to do on old paint is to make it look like it's been like sun bleached from the top or something like that. So I'm gonna go and just add a layer. I'll use an overlay layer. And I'm just gonna use a slightly brighter gray with a little bit of warmth to it. And I'm just gonna use like a big soft brush, which is not what I chose. And wherever the sun's been kind of like hitting it, it just kind of bleaches the paint out a little bit. Adds a little bit of age to it. So now the paint's done. Now we can go back. I'm gonna go back onto the paint and do some like grease strips, but I want to do the sort of like dirt texture on the mechanics. So all I'm gonna do is just use a multiply layer with the same kind of like gray, and I'm just gonna kind of like stamp in a little bit of noise, just kind of darken it up, get some grit on there, and then I'll go through and just look for places that are just a little bit too one note and find ways to kind of give them a little bit more body. And then go and specifically, let's add some grease. The nice thing about grease is it acts like almost like an ambient occlusion, where like it kind of gets trapped in the crevices, some of this stuff. So you can kind of go through and kind of bring up some of the details a little bit. Anywhere you can imagine dirt getting trapped, you know, in between these brackets, whatever. And then we'll go back up on top of the paint, and we're gonna do our drips layer. And then I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna dump a color like that over top of everything and mask that off. And now we can just decide like where grease has dripped out. He has like we'll do like a one that kind of looks like a tear. Anywhere like panels meet where they've just been kind of neglected getting serviced, so he's just got grease dripping out, and or just dirt. It doesn't necessarily have to be grease, but like anywhere that there's like metal touching. Imagine streaks. And just take your blur tool and just kind of soften those up a little bit. Yeah, Casper, I know you've asked me this in the past. I have no idea where I got that scratch brushes. In fact, I don't even. It's been a million years since I got that brush, so I don't know. But I really don't know whose it was. I'm pretty sure I didn't make it myself, which I have made brushes before, but I don't think that that's one of them. I think that was one that I was trying to emulate. But I just don't feel comfortable giving it out. But if I do think of it, or if I come across it, I'll post it up, because I know that's been a question on people's minds. Alright, so use the grease to kind of reinforce some of this stuff. We're just about done with this guy. But you can see, like, I try and keep it really compartmentalized, so that's easier for me to manage. So it's just a lot with mechs. Alright, cool. I'm satisfied enough with that. Next up is going to be Crabbo. I wrote crap. I literally wrote crap as his name. Okay. So a lot of the bleaching and things that happen on metal are similar to things that happen on crabs. So I'm gonna do some. I want this to be a little bit deeper in color, so I'm gonna go a little darker. And I'm just gonna start with just a soft brush, and I'm just gonna try and find like the low points down in his legs. It'll kind of like this. This is like an old trick too, where it helps make things like the face pop a little bit more. So on the extremities, leave it alone. And then, because he is a crustacean, he's going to have some of this lighter color. It's going to start being chipped about wherever. Just it's not the same as paint in the sense that it's because he's been scraping up against things. It's more like the pigment that makes up their shells starts to get worn away on some of the higher edges. But it's more fun than metal in some ways, because you can do this like speckly look. And then wherever like there's these kind of barnacle looking, they're not barnacles, they're like the spines that are growing on them. Just kind of like imagine they're like stretching that pigment out and causing it to get exposed. And I don't have the brush on full opacity right now, because that way it allows me to kind of like build it up organically. So if I want it more certain areas, I can just stay on that area a little bit longer and just keep scrubbing away. But I love the little kind of like freckly speckles that they get all over their shells. Why I was saying like I didn't need to be doing the belly, because I knew I was gonna kind of do this thing where like inside their arms and areas there's some of that belly color kind of leaking through. I know that like when you look at like a crab claw, the sort of teeth of the claw, those are always brighter. Sometimes they have black on them, which looks really cool. this is just for now, this is just like the soft brush with a nice thick to thin on it, and I'm just hand stamping the stuff same way I did with the chipped metal. Just kind of going through, and then I think I will use a noise brush on these guys as well. And I want to use the same color on the backpack, so I'm going to put that underneath and start doing that. Okay, so some more freckles on this guy. All right, and that purple is looking pretty janky, so just desaturating it and darkening it a little bit goes a long way. Kind of just makes the sort of pinkish red of his shell look a little bit more important. What else do we want to do to him? The belly is fine. The ropes are fine. And then we'll just work on his eyes. I think for the eyes we'll do the opposite as we did before. I think I'm going to just darken them at their bases and let them be a little bit brighter. So I'll do something like that. This is just the easier way to do it, is just to start with the dark and then go to the bright. And we'll use that dark again to kind of create some veins. These are subtle, but it's nice to have the kind of smooth gradients broken up by some little small details. It goes a long way. And the last thing we can do on something like this is we try this. I might not do it, but I'm just going to do like a full-on color shift. So I'm going to do below his belly, yeah, below all that kind of exposed, and I'm just going to do like he's kind of gradiating to another color. Maybe this will look nice. Let's change the backpack to a little bit more of an interesting color. Nothing too crazy, but just something where it kind of like stands out. There we go. And then I'm going to do this grad. It's like organic grad, where I use that same color up from the bottom. And I've got my transparency pretty low, but it just kind of creates a little bit of interest, and it ties it to the backpack a little bit. And then I'm just kind of stamping it so it's not so just like straight up gradient. You can see the difference. It's just like a little bit more interesting than it was before. Okay, so that's Crabbo. And then I've just got some random layer. That's cool. We love random layers. Okay, and then we'll go to Demon. Demon doesn't need much, but I have some ways of making creepy demons. So I didn't make the teeth different colors, which I should have. So let's do that now. We'll just go with a nice bright color. I really like this stage too. I think that way, like a lot of times, the shading doesn't need to do as much lifting. But it needs work still. Okay, so here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna make some sort of like fleshy bits, like as they kind of like enter into the. Let's just do it. So yeah, something like that. Wrong brush. Okay. Here we go. Just like an interesting way to do the transition from one form to another, so that it's just not all the same. And then I think on these claws, we get this like nice deep purple, but rather than having it be the claws are like distinct, I think it's nice to have like a gradient. So it's like I don't know, it's more demonic to me. And then we'll do the same thing with the legs with this teal. I don't want to do it as much because it's going to look like he has underpants on. But I do want to kind of embrace that creepiness. The only time, sorry, I didn't read the second part of your question. The only time I show clients this stage. Do they see the stage? Yeah, they see the stage. This would be the flat stage. When we're kind of agreeing on what the overall color is going to be of the character. So the thing that they don't see often, which is maybe to your question, is they don't see the shading in the final rendering until it's really close to done. So they aren't privy to any of this part of the process. Not for any reason other than they don't need to see how the sausage is made. But yeah, I usually will give them 2 or 3 color choices of each character, and it's at this stage with no rendering on it. But I will say I very rarely finish a drawing and show it to them at that stage, so it's not quite the same. Meaning they don't get like a final, like these drawings I would consider closer to final. They're a little loose, but I don't show them the color palettes on final drawings, because if something's discovered on a character, and it's different every single time obviously, but if something's discovered that needs to be changed, then I don't want to be adjusting something on a final drawing. I want to be adjusting it on something that's a little bit more temporary. And the nice thing is, like with the color palettes on the rougher drawings, is you can be really sloppy and just be very suggestive, and they don't get caught up on the specifics of things as much, and that's what you want. You want them just making the decision on the color. Alright, so I'm not liking the red as much anymore. Let's see. Probably a bit more purple. Yeah. Okay. We are done with the flats. Alright, let's get some rendering going on. trying to decide if I'm going to just shade them all in the same layer or go and keep them in individual folders. Guess I'll just do them on individual layers. It's all the same. So let's go back to Moth Boy over here. So as usual, I create a solid color. And just kind of make that slightly transparent. Yeah, I'm gonna be lazy because we're already over an hour in. I'm just gonna do it all in one layer. Okay, so and then I'll multiply that on top, and yep. And we'll just start doing some shading. All right, so I won't go absolutely nuts with the shading just because everyone will fall asleep on me. But like with the fur's nice because you can kind of just like block in your general shading, and then you go back with the smudge tool and then kind of tweak it by hand. But again, using your masks that you have already made up goes a long way. Slightly darker. So I'm going to change the color of this shadow quite a bit, but I want to be able to really see it. So fur looks ugly for a really long time. I don't know if you guys have seen any of the other videos. Fur. But it just does. Completely ignoring the eyes right now. Kind of using the smudge tool to kind of start the process of getting this to look a little bit better. So it's already looking better with just a little bit of smudging. And then we just need to add some more volume in there, so I'll go back to doing my selection stuff. And just with fur, you just kind of have to imagine where like the different plane changes are, and let it be ugly at first, and then just work it. And then we'll go back and do some individual stuff. And this is one of those things, and I promise you, if anybody's trying fur out for the first time, it's gonna go a way you don't want it to go for a while. It just is not. It's not as intuitive as like rendering metal cars and different things like that. I wish it was. I would do more fur characters if that was the case. Alright. So I am just ignoring everything like the eyes and everything in lieu of just concentrating on the fur. And we can always obliterate that. So I'm just looking for little opportunities to have some like really specific shadows. I don't want to spend a ton of time doing every little follicle, but just the ones that just kind of carry all the weight. Again, the highlights are going to do a lot of the, again, you guys have seen me do that. Okay, so I'll do the eyes. So you can see I'm just like loading selections from my flats. Interesting stuff going on with the teeth. I think just make this area look like it's recessing in a little bit more. Okay. So now we can do, let's do the scrolls. Those are just cylinders. That's pretty straightforward. And I'm just going to work front to back on these things. Doing the global shadowing first, I can go back and look at some of the individual stuff. But if I do this, and then I can kind of reinforce some of these shadows. I'm just sort of ignoring my ink work. Some of the shadows that I put in, which I, again, kind of regret doing, but it is what it is. Individually, I'm going to just assume that these things are mostly in shadow over here. And these shadows, the individual little pieces of paper. Cool. And then we'll do, what are we going to do next? We'll do the leather. We'll do the skull after that. So just get the basic lighting in. Oh. What did I just do? Okay. So load the leather, remove the fur. Now I can paint. Okay. Actually, I can remove the paper as well. Yeah, even better. So I'm just gonna assume most of this is in basic shadow. Get the rolls of paper casting over this wrinkle section. And then quickly wipe in. I'm just only looking at the straps. I'll go back and fix the bags in a second, but I don't want to paint the straps if they're not important. Or, yeah. Paint the parts of the straps. Alright, now what did I see before that I wanted to change? Besides the sacks. That looks fine. Alright, so in the straps themselves, just like I did on the teeth, I'll just add like a few little planes. Shadow change kind of makes them a little bit more interesting. Alright, and then let's do the skulls. Is that what I want to do next? No, I already forgot the sacks. Okay, so sacks. Just the one sack, because the other one's pretty much a shadow. This one, this flap. Cool. Cheating down onto the pants already, but whatever. Oh, that's what I was thinking. So this fur under the skull, definitely want it to look like it's nice and dark under there. Okay, so let's do the skull. These can be, that one's going to be mostly obliterated, so let's just knock that one back, and then this skull in the foreground. Start basic, and then I think it'll be important to let the highlights do a lot of work on this one. Alright, so side of the nasal cavities, side of the tooth, side of the zygomatic. I'll get a little bit further and I'll give it a little sneak peek as to like where we're heading with this, as far as like just turning off that kind of like white layer. Okay, so let's do the arms. So knock in his bicep. And then do the straps. So we can just load the wraps as a mask. Remove this arms bracelet. Yep. Okay. So this one over here, it's getting cast down on top of, so let's not waste our time too much on that. Then we can just cast a little shadows off each wrap. And then this one gets a bit more specificity. Cast from the bracelet. Cool. And you can see like all these little errors in my paint. I don't know if you can see them, but it's because the masking wasn't perfect. We'll come back to the hands in a second. Let's do the pants. Pants. Knock in our big shadow shapes. So for wrinkles, one way to do them is you overpaint a little shadow, and then you go back and just kind of pick up the rises and remove ever so slightly, remove that. There's a lot of ways to paint wrinkles, but that is something that I like doing. So feel free if I'm doing something that doesn't make sense, I will try and explain it. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense. Okay, so we didn't really play with the fur too much down here. Might look too abrupt. Yeah, let's see. almost done with this guy. Alright, so if we take away that layer, and then we probably gonna go about like that, I think. So you can see once we start adding that volume, I'm actually gonna colorize it as well, so that'll be kind of cool. Alright, let's get back to the next one. So yeah, it's just really harsh right now. It's just easier for me to see what's going on. So for this robot, I'll lay in like a general shadow. Something that we can work from. Cool. Trying to go quiet on you guys again. I'm sorry. I'm just gonna try to concentrate a little bit on what some of this. Doing the shading is kind of like doing math. Fun math though. Like, I don't know if that's a thing. But it just sort of swallow up your brain as far as calculating things out. And this stage definitely can feel repetitive, but if you want things to really feel volumetric, if you are working on a game that's going to be, you know, like rendered in high fidelity, it's pretty crucial to get this stuff down. so that whoever's modeling it or whoever's lighting it, texturing it, they all have like a good general idea of like what is trying to be achieved. Not sure I'm going to do this many characters in one sitting again for the streams, but we will pull it off one way or another. Let's see how we're doing. Yep. Getting a lot of weird pauses tonight. I don't know why. Make sure this is saved in case we have a problem. Yeah. normally I would spend a lot more time on these shadows. Really dialing them in with using selections and things like that, but I just don't think we'll get to the finish line. I'll go back and tweak them if we have time. Something to do with my histories is slowing down tonight. Let's see what happens. I don't know if it's too big of a file. It's having trouble. It's catching up though. So kudos to the machine for giving it its all. Should be about enough for him. Do a couple little planes. His legs, feet. Cool. And then just taking another look. Here I can do this. I can do. Probably go with something like. That I think, so you can see, just adding those volumes. I'm gonna try painting this guy without turning the white layer on. See how that goes. Seems to be all right. This guy's definitely got some mental issues, I think. Probably seen too many undersea friends get taken away by lobster traps or something like that. Something's causing him some kind of grief. Yeah, I can speed this up by just kind of doing it this way, so I'm not losing all our time trying to get the specificity of the shadows. Cool, it's gonna work good. Especially on these guys, things that are more reflective, the shadow isn't nearly as crucial because it's doing a lot more reflected light than it's doing anything else. So the shadow becomes less of a contributing factor to the final lighting. And then this demon guy, pretty simple overall. But I do want to do some of his wrinkles. So I'll slow down and do that. Get some of his sort of ambient look going. So, go to the demon. So after this, we're gonna, I think, yeah, we'll definitely do the shading, the highlights after this. I'm not gonna bother trying to get like core shadows in, because I think for this guy in particular, I want to do a little bit of subsurface with some veins and that kind of business, and that'll look pretty cool. For the crab, doesn't really need. Yeah, most of these guys can handle it out. Okay, so let's call that shadows. And now we're going to do the cheap highlights, which is when I take all the flats. I'm ignoring all the like eyes and lights and stuff as much as I can right now. I'm going to do some probably hand painting on those because I did the weird shading thing that I was been complaining about. Alright, so this is the shadows. And I'm going to take all of my flats, I'm going to duplicate them, I'm going to merge them together, I'm going to put them up above the shadows, and then I'm going to group those, put the shadow mask on top of that group, call that highlights. This all looks terrible if you haven't seen me do this before. And then invert that mask so it's only revealing the non-shaded areas. Set this to add. Everything gets bright. And then I'm going to throw a mask on that layer and fill it with black and start our highlight pass. And I think that's going to be fine. we'll start with the most difficult, which is fur. So we go across the forms, and I'm just going to go way, way overboard at first. And you treat it kind of like shiny, really oily skin. And then start really playing with the hair direction. At first, I really don't care that it looks super shiny. All I care about is kind of like combing the hair, getting like nice little individual kind of like paths of fur. See, it starts to look like really like oily hair at first. And then I'm gonna take my brush and drop the opacity way down and start adding and subtracting a little bit. So as it goes away from the light source, you'll start to see just more individual strands kind of picked up in the light. And as it gets closer to that actual light direction, it's more solid, and then as it goes away, it starts to break up again. And I almost want to take it, depending upon how shiny you actually imagine the hair, but you can almost take it completely out. You just want it like subtly there if he's like a nice fluffy kind of Chewbacca looking character. But if he's more oily, then you would leave the sheen really bright. I'm just going back and forth and adding and subtracting. Starting to work. Okay, so now I'll knock it way back. So I'm just going to slowly remove until it calms it down. Just the right amount. Yeah, I think that looks alright. Cool. Fur is intimidating, but it could be handled if you just kind of think of it as a process. Then it's not so bad. Semi-fluffy badass. That's what we can all aspire to be, as semi-fluffy badasses. Alright, so the papers, they're not going to have much of a highlight on them because they're pretty matte, but I'll just indulge myself by just putting like a little bit of highlight on them. Just little light catches to kind of make them more interesting. But you kind of lose the illusion if you go too heavy with the highlights. So for the leather though, leather should have like a nice oily highlight. So that's like a pretty fun thing to be able to paint. Just does a lot. So you go in, just kind of create a nice oily highlight and then starts taking some of the scratches back out of it. Skull's nice and shiny. Pitted. And then just calm that down. Really like just like overpainting everything and then just calming it down afterwards. Not for any reason, it's just easier for me to see. I don't know, maybe it's my old age. I need to be able to see everything blatantly first. The pants, I'm imagining, are probably not too shiny, so we'll just keep that kind of broad. Just like in the past, just kind of break up that material, highlight, and then it'll read as kind of like noisy text, not too shiny. Then his skin a little bit more shiny. Cool. Alright, so then we'll move on to the robot. Start getting his highlights in, so I'll just start with the basics. Look back and kind of dither up that surface a little bit. I'm going to go back on all of this and then work up a separate highlight pass that just sort of like isolates, makes things like a little bit more interesting. And then we'll do a rim light. I think that's probably going to be enough. Now obviously, because this guy's made of like pitted up, destroyed metal and things like that, it's these real shiny highlights that I'm putting on are kind of like, I would say, like improper. So definitely need to just overpaint them, like I've been saying, and then go back and calm them way down. In fact, you know, you look at like a military jeep or a tank or something like that, and they have hardly any highlight at all. My problem with that is that's no fun to paint. So, gotta do something. But we can use the same technique where we take like a noise brush and just kind of chew away at it. So you take those highlights and you start chipping away at them using different kind of like scratch brushes. And that's the way you kind of like reduce them back. Then it, all of a sudden those highlights start to look a little bit more appropriate. And that's nice. It's fun too because like you can be really sloppy with your highlights. You don't have to be super specific about them anymore because you know you're gonna go and screw them all up anyway, which is nice. All right, so that guy's looking pretty good. Do the crab. So I didn't really plan on doing this, but I'm just stamping in some highlights with the noise brush that I was just using to remove. And then I'll just go back and usually do it the other way around, but get us started. All right. Crabs are really fun to do highlights on because if you imagine they're a little bit wet, they just have really fun highlights on them. You just have to imagine which way the sky is facing so you can figure out where they go. It's kind of like painting the leather where it's like this like nice oily highlight. And then you go through and just sort of remove it. But they have tons of edges, like really fun edges, or wherever these cracks are. Start building up those cracks. All of a sudden it starts to have a lot of character to it. You get me? You get me? Alright, so doing the like oily highlights, and I'll just start cutting back in, breaking up that highlight a little bit so it's not all just super smooth. That's the thing that's going to make the surface feel the most like the surface we're trying to achieve. Okay, I went pretty quick. Could definitely noodle it, but I don't think it's going to need it. It's going to benefit a lot from our secondary highlight pass where I go through and sort of brighten up some of the highlight spots and make things a little bit more specific. And then last but not least, we got, oh yeah, I'm still going. Got Mr. Demon Boy over here. He's not going to need much because I think I'm going to make him glow. So I'm just going to play with a little bit of highlight on him. I just want a little extra volume out of him. Yeah, I think his legs and arms can be nice and oily. And they can be like legit oily, like we don't have to cut back in. Just creepy, gross, slimy. But in a good way. Alright, so now let's go through and figure out the specifics of what each character needs. So I'm going to do some blood volume stuff on the moth. So start with, I think we'll do the red. We'll do like a subsurface red. Whoa, oh yeah, okay. So add. I'm just gonna mask that off. So anywhere like his fingers and stuff like that, where some of the light can get through. And then I definitely went overboard there, but I just want to be able to see it. You can see how it just sort of like illuminates, kind of makes the hands and knuckles stand out more. So now we'll just knock it way, way back. But just having it subtly there, it kind of like thins up the material down there, adds like a bit of waxiness to it. I'm not going to overdo it, but I just want to play with it a bit. Keep hitting the wrong, there we go. and I'm gonna use the same one. No, I'm not. That's even looking a little intense. Let's go back up. There, it's nicer. And then let's start the highlight pass. So this highlight pass that I'm gonna do now is just straight up painting. I'm not doing anything besides just like picking colors and adding in like really specific highlights. No real trick to it, just paint. And the reason this is important is because some of the layer effects that you end up using, they have limitations to them, and at some point you just need to say like, all right, I need to paint that actual highlight in. So don't get caught up just trying to preserve some like layer mode or something like that. And a lot of times these highlights this is when I start faking things, just to kind of like bring things up to where they need to be, to kind of like be a little bit extra special. And then same thing on the robot. So just like every once in a while there's like a little shiny spot or something, a little glint. Kind of don't need a lot of them, but just a little help here and there goes a long way. Alright, this crab definitely needs some nice bright highlights to say I'm fresh out the water. You can see just pinning down some of those highlights with like a little bit of an extra highlight to supplement the overall. Goes a long way to kind of make things pop. This guy oiled up. And that looks terrible. So that's the highlights. Now I'm going to start having some fun with some glows. For the glows, I want those to live above the line work. So for the demon, I'm going to do a little bit of this red that's going on in him. And just bear with me because it's going to look like absolute junk for a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to do like an internal glow on him. And then I'm gonna have veins. I feel bad even saying that out loud. Like a vein thing going on. All these like subdermal veins going on. As you do. That's looking pretty cool. Punch that up in the center a little bit. So that's his little veiny thing going on, and then he needs something to make his corpuscly things glow. And again, just kind of removing some stuff for the veins. Yeah, guy's freaky as anything. As he should be. And then the crab. I'm gonna try and keep these on separate layers, but now I'm starting to get a little messy. Crab doesn't need much, but he definitely wants to have a little bit of the glowing eye action. Kind of get a little bit of the blood volume going on. Cool. That guy's done. That was fast. And then the lights on the robot need some love. Okay, he's just about done. And then the last thing on the moth guy would be to make his eyes just have a little pop too. Not that color. Not that color. How about that color? Cool. Okay, so 2 more steps. We're gonna color the line work just a little bit. And then I'm gonna add a rim light. So this one ever so slightly calm the line work down a little bit. I'm gonna go overboard and I'm gonna dial it back a little. It may not seem like it did that much, but it works especially good on fur. Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Sorry, I know this does take a long time, but I somehow decided to do 4 characters, which is hilariously silly. Alright, so now I'm just going to do the rim light, and that should tie them all together. And we'll probably choose like let's do a solid color. Something like that. Oh, we all have our favorites. Okay, so this is just like I'm gonna do the quick and dirty rim light, nothing too photo accurate. Just a little something to round out our forms. This goes pretty quick. People who really spend a lot of time lighting don't like these kind of cheap rim lights, but I say they're right. But it's fine. It's fun to just add an extra little bit of volume on these things. Just kind of going around, just kind of picking up the other edge a little bit. Pretty much wraps us up. Alright, I'm just going to shift that a little bit towards gray, green. Yeah, that's better. And cool. And that is going to do it. is a bonus. I gave you a bonus character. That's all you're getting. Alright. Well, it's 2 o'clock in the morning for me. I just painted 4 characters. But I think that's going to wrap it up. Hope you guys got something out of it. Yeah. It's a funny thing about being a character designer. You end up having to do things a lot pretty fast. But these are all techniques that I've done. Once you get into things that are, you know, kind of like out of your element, they definitely slow things down. But all right, guys. Well, I will post this up. I need 3 thumbs up if I'm gonna put it on Gumroad. Otherwise, I'm just gonna pass out on the couch. Oh. Well, it's not 8 a.m. here. I wish it was 8 a.m. No, I don't. I'd be asleep. I'm gonna be asleep anyway. But yeah, if you guys are interested in the PSD file, if you want me to go through and clean it up, put it on Gumroad, give me a few thumbs up. Otherwise, I'm done. I will get this posted up, and if you guys want to skip through it again at some point or whatever, it'll all be available for you. Alright, Alex is 1 thumbs up. Anyone else care if it's on Gumroad or not? It's not really any different than any of the other files that are up there as far as like technique goes. Oh, and by all means, if anybody has any questions for me, like I'm just done painting. If anybody has questions, I can answer those. Otherwise, then I'll bail on you. Cool. I'm glad you guys are getting stuff out of it. It's fun. Okay. All right. Cool. All right. I will put this up. Thanks. Thanks for showing up. All right. All right. Well, I will. If nobody has any questions, I will sign off. I'll get this video posted. I'll clean up the file. I'll throw it on Gumroad. It usually takes me about 20 minutes. Mostly just naming files and creating thumbnails and stuff like that. So. I'm sorry that this is your moment of glory. But hey. Alright. I will see you guys on Monday. Let's see what I want to do on Monday coming up. I'm gonna do the Gumroad is just Lost Bear Studios. If you just look up Lost Bear Studios, that's where all the Gumroad stuff is. The brushes I draw with are there for free. There's a paper model up there for free, and then there's a bunch of PSDs if you guys want to dig into those and see what this process looks like. Yeah, and so next week, I don't want to do weapons again, although that was really fun. I do want to do a gun. I know Casper was asking for a gun, but I don't want to do. If it's been a long week, I'm going to free sketch. So I'm just going to do the free sketching, which is fun. It's nice and relaxing. If this is what I'll do. And if it's not been a long week, I'll do a gun. And we'll just take it through the process of doing a full-on gun. So that'll be next week. And I will follow my heart. Yeah, and once if I get the video up and you guys have a chance, do the like and subscribe thing. That definitely helps me out. It's not the end of the world if you don't, but it's nice because it kind of like gets it up and higher in the algorithms and more people can find them, and that's really cool. All right, I will see you guys next Monday. Hope you guys all have an awesome week. Get this file saved.